Yeah, that's a really nice buck there.
Beautiful buck. Thank God Callie found it.
Yes, indeed. And we're here. This is the Callie Chronicles. Welcome, everyone. I'm down here with my buddy Charlie Elk here in Wisconsin, and Callie actually tracked this deer for us last fall. I'm down here hanging some cameras. We're going to do some deer hunting down here again this fall. But while I was down here, I figured we would relive the story of this track. This track lasted 22 hours from the time you shot the buck until we finally put hands on it. And so I'm gonna let Charlie here explain some of the events of that afternoon, that evening, and then the next morning, next day of tracking, because it started at 5 o'clock and ended at 3:30 or somewhere like that in the afternoon the next day. If I had to interject, I will. Because
that's good. You got to keep me straight on timelines.
Yes, there was a lot going on. So take it away, Charlie.
And it was a long story.
So take it away from the beginning when you shot the deer. Describe, you don't have to go into a whole lot of details about the hunt, but maybe the deer approached and what you did and tracked it.
Yeah, nobody want to hear how easy it was.
Yeah, so
from the shot standpoint.
Yeah, so go ahead.
And then it turned into a true hunt from that point forward, because the buck wandered down the hill. And what I always do when there's a deer approaching is I always picture the angles of the arrow path so that I know when I get my first good shooting opportunity, that's a shot and it needs to be taken and it's going to be lethal. And one thing I might mention about that, somebody might be interested in, is when I go into a stand, it's we determined about the third week of October, and the leaves were all crunching, like those eggshell type leaves. And so what I do is I put my toe down and then put my heel so I simulate the path of a four-legged animal.
Sounds like a deer walking.
So I sound like a deer walking in. Yeah. And I pause and do all that good stuff. Anyway, I got into a stand that I had set up for years. And I was just out resting from turkey dogging. I thought, I wasn't in that stand 10 minutes and he starts walking down the hill right to me. I frequently have deer do that, because I sound like a deer when I walk in, and I believe it is actually an attractive.
Yeah, he heard you walking. He thought you were a deer walking.
Yeah.
And because we were close to that Halloween date when deer start to get antsy and start looking for does.
He's either looking that there might be a doe down there, or he's looking that there was some competition.
A rival buck
there.
Yeah.
And he just, maybe he was bedded on the hillside or something, and he decided to move down.
I should point out to the viewers that we know each other from turkey hunting with each other.
Yeah.
And we were actually supposed to go fall turkey hunting the following day.
Correct.
And so you snuck out for an evening hunt, figuring if
just
you
a
shot
quickie.
one, if he shot one, he could get it tracked and recovered and cleaned up, and then the next morning, was I supposed to come down and stay that night? Or?
Yeah, you were going to be coming down later.
Okay.
In the evening, so I figured, I got time.
That's right.
I shoot a deer, it's going to drop within 40, 50 yards.
And now that we're talking about it, a lot of these memories are coming back. I called you up to verify our timeline of when I should have arrived and what the plan was, and you told me, well, I just shot a deer, and I'm tracking him now, so it's going to be a little while.
And then you said, I'm going to turn around and get Callie, even if it's an easy track. I want to do some more training.
I want to get her some, every track she goes on is training, whether it's an easy track or a hard track.
Correct.
Well, this turned out to be a epic track.
Yeah.
The most memorable track of the season, just because what all was involved. So anyway, you shot the deer.
Yeah, I shot the deer. Had what I thought was good shot placement. The deer started to wander off sideways, sidelining on the hill, and he almost disappeared from sight, and I could see his rack, and then his rack went down, and there was a sapling that wiggled, like shook, and I remember thinking, he's dead at the base of that sapling.
Yeah.
Because everything from my point of view, and I should mention too, I shot this deer at less than 10 yards.
Yep.
And I thought there was a dead deer there. In spite of that, I have an old habit of waiting for anywhere from
that's a good habit.
20 to 30 minutes, just in case the deer's not quite dead yet. I don't want to give him a burst of adrenaline and he gets up and doesn't leave a blood trail and then dies shortly after. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of the tracking dog at that moment in time, and I was thinking, well, the deer's going to be dead right by the sapling. So anyway, I wait that time, get down, walk over. There's no dead deer by the sapling, but huge pools of blood. I'm going, all right.
No deer, but
No deer, but
lots
from
of blood.
all my experience, the blood's foamy, clearly lung hit. I mean, just everything was classic on it. And then I started trailing the deer, and he started going back up the hill. Bad sign. I don't like mortally wounded deer starting to travel up an incline.
Yeah.
And then I came upon, and there was where he had clearly bedded down, and there was a big pool of blood, and I'm thinking, oh, this deer's got to bleed out soon.
Now, did you jump the deer at any point?
I never heard him jump, but see, the problem is I got problem. There's so many deer in this area that, there's deer, as I'm trailing this deer, there's deer running up the hill, there's deer running down the hill, there's deer running at me, behind me, and I'm more worried about these deer messing up the trail so I can't find my target deer. And so I couldn't tell you that. And then the leaves were still up, so the visibility was bad. Once you're off, these are really thick, brushy hills.
And that's about the point I called you after the second.
Yeah, well, you called me right when I hit my neighbor's property line, and the neighbor I hadn't met him yet. He had just purchased the property that adjacent to mine.
I arrived on the scene, and it was about 10 o'clock that night.
Yep.
By the time I arrived, after he had tracked it a little bit, and we talked, and I got down here.
Yep, and I'd secured permission. The neighbor is really a super nice guy, just whatever you need to do. He was a dog guy, didn't have any trouble with a dog entering his property.
And so we put Callie on the track, and like you said, there was lots of blood, and Callie had no problem following. She was barking and pulling. I mean, it was a pretty fresh track for her, even though it was already 5 hours old at this point, and lots of blood. And then we ran into...
even by flashlight.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like somebody had poured blood. It was like it was going to be child's play. There was going to be a dead deer here soon.
But at one point, going up that hill, there was like a four-wheeler trail or something going up the hill. Callie cut into the brush, and there was blood in there, and it looked like the deer may have bedded down in there. We weren't sure. Didn't see a positive sign of a bed on the ground. But then the blood trail kind of went cold.
What's so typical of a blood trail, then it starts to taper away. And at first you think, well, a mortally hit deer that's going to die, they're running out of blood. It usually does taper away.
Yeah.
Figured Callie would bay with a dead deer any moment.
Yeah, and so...
It wasn't to be.
We went up. She took me up the hill to the field. And you're going to see footage overlaid here of what little bit of footage I have and pictures and stuff to help tell this story. Or maps, satellite images, but we headed up to a little field. She took me up there, and after we went across this field, now we're using flashlights, and I don't see blood great anyway. I don't have the best vision for picking up blood.
Blood was virtually gone at that point.
Yes, and so, but at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, I don't see blood great. I can see blood, but I don't see as good as some people can see it 30 yards away, a drop of blood. I don't see it like that. I have to be pretty close, and I'll see it. But I didn't see any blood.
When you get older, that'll happen. You won't be able to see things close, but I can see it way up there.
I'm getting old.
I see the tick on that deer 100 yards away, yeah.
But at any rate, she took me up to the field, and we went across that field a little ways, and I didn't see any blood, and so I brought Callie back to last blood. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot on this track, I'll tell you that right now. Always trust your dog, or not necessarily always, but trust your dog a lot more than you think you should. Because a lot of times they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I was telling you that.
Yeah, and I learned that on this track because there was a lot of times she was doing the right thing and I stopped her. But anyway, I turned around, came back to last blood, and started again. This time she took me back up to the field again, and I yelled back to you and said, I'm going to let her see where she takes me. You keep looking for blood. Well, she took me across this field, and there was a little point of woods that came out on it, and now we're kind of going uphill in this field. And around that point, and she just let me keep going. I mean, I just let her keep going, and she took me, and it was a few hundred yards, it seemed like. And she was approaching another woodlot, and there was a four-wheeler trail that entered there. And I said, when we get there, I'll mark the spot, and I'll turn back and talk to you. Well, we got to right to that four-wheeler trail, and I stopped her. And when I stopped her, I looked down, and there was a big quarter-sized drop of blood there. And I was like, yes, Callie's got us on the track.
Yeah.
But it's getting pretty late. The blood was wet. The drop of blood was wet. So I was wondering, maybe this deer is not done.
Well, that's the moment when I start thinking, man, did I screw up my shot? Because, things at the moment of shot, they can always look good. Sometimes they look bad and they turn out good.
And this track was going a lot farther than we thought.
There was no way, the way I hit this deer, I thought that this deer should be going this far.
Yeah, 100 yards max. So
100 yards max.
We were probably...
Deer should be dead within, Most of my deer drop in 50 yards.
How far do you think we were at that point? 600 yards?
3/4 mile.
So it was a good ways.
We were a long ways away from where we started.
Yeah.
And with a skimpy blood trail, I was getting depressed.
So we marked the spot, and we went back in and went to bed to start early the next morning.
Yeah.
Early the next morning.
As soon as we had light, we could see.
Yeah. And early next morning, and I did have the camera with me the next morning, and I started Callie at that last drop of blood, and she right on it again, even though it had been another 8 hours later, I guess it was, because it was about 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and then we started going through. The neighbor had a food plot and stuff, and we were messing around up on that food plot.
On that food plot, this is where it gets
this deer
interesting.
we thought, see, it's a preconceived notion thing too. Whenever you're trailing or hunting, that I always talk about is you have to avoid preconceived notions whenever you can. And you would think, well, he's a hit deer, he's going to take the path of least resistance. And so we kept thinking that the deer was going to go across the food plot. I happen to agree with you because we had this little bit of a debate.
Yeah.
Because everything else was brush lined around the edges. And we thought that deer was going to be like dead in that food plot or something. And again, you kept trying to correct Callie because she wanted to go in the brush line back behind.
But I'll go back up a little bit. When we first got there, Callie took me down that little four-wheeler trail across that food plot, and whether she was still in the trail or not, or either had cut the trail again where the deer came back out.
Well, 20/20 hindsight, I think she was air scenting at that moment because the deer was bedded at the far
and
end
that's
of the
very
food plot.
possible because Callie took me all the way to the other end of that food plot, and when she got to the other end where there's woods, and you'll see it in the video, I'll point it out with a little arrow off to the right. You'll see a trail camera actually to the left first. We passed a trail camera. And I want you to remember trail cameras because we passed a lot of them. And that comes into the story. But when we got to the end of that food plot into those pines and there's a trail that went down the hill, I stopped Callie because I wasn't sure she was still in the trail. Trust your dog, remember that. And I wasn't. And I stopped her and turned it around to go back and look for blood. Off to the right, I'm going to stop the video and there's an arrow. That right there is a wound bed of a deer. This deer had gotten up at some point that morning. I don't know if it was from us or coyotes because there were coyote pictures in the trail camera. I wish we had saved those pictures, but they're not our cameras. We called the landowner. He gave us permission to...
talk about a great neighbor.
Yeah.
He let us pull the cards out of his trail cam so we could see because we thought, well, this deer went through here. We're going to have pictures of him and we could see how he's hit.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
But we saw pictures of coyotes, pictures of does, pictures of me and Callie.
Yeah.
Tracking the deer.
And no deer.
And no buck. And somehow he was avoiding these cameras. And then that's when we had our first clue that...
Yeah, because then what I did is I separated from Callie and I went down behind her little pond thing up there, remember?
Mm-hmm. In the food
And that
plot.
was where that first trail camera was, and I went behind the trail camera and I picked up some spots of blood back there.
Yeah.
And then I could actually follow the trail pretty decently, which looped around to where Callie was trying to take you, where that...
She smelled where that deer was laying or where it had lain.
Where its scent
the
was
deer,
really
it may have
strong,
gotten
right?
up as we approached, but we did see Cody.
And that deer was laying sideways. He wasn't laying in a ball like a deer usually would be.
He was laying
sideways because you could see in the leaves the imprint of the antler. I think that's...
I took pictures of that.
Yeah.
I took pictures of that, so we'll show you the kind of the shape of the body. It was laying down with like its head down or like it was laying there to expire. Yeah. And we're not sure if the coyotes jumped that deer up or we jumped it up as we approached because we were making a little noise too. But at any rate,
we were making a lot of noise.
You found the blood behind behind the camera on the pond there, indicating this buck actually went around the backside of this camera.
But around the backside of the camera, which I didn't think much of at the time.
No.
Because I thought, okay, he's not taking the path of least resistance. He's taking
cover.
The brush line where he feels secure.
Yeah.
Because he's in bad shape.
Yeah.
And then we found that spot. You want me to continue?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay.
You found the wound bed. So
we found the wound bed there, and then there was we couldn't tell any blood which way he
direction of travel from the bed.
And then we started making the traditional preconceived, I did anyway, rectangular grid out from that spot to see if I could pick up anything else. And from there, Callie wasn't picking up a scent immediately.
She did a big loop. She did a big loop.
It was kind of confusing.
But she did a big loop, and that big loop through the woods, I had no idea where I was at, but I let Callie go, and she circled around and brought us right back to the wound bed.
Yeah.
And one or two things.
Oh, that's right. That's where I met up with you again. Yeah.
One of two things happened there. Either one, she was doing a circle and couldn't find the scent, and so she headed back to where she last had it.
Yep.
Or two, there were coyotes around, and they picked up the deer scent on their feet or whatever, because this does happen. Coyotes at a deer kill will contaminate the woods with scent of a deer.
Well, clearly that deer laid there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And if a coyote walked through the bed, smelled the blood.
So Callie may have been following that coyote that had deer scent on it. But anyway, it brought us back to the wound bed. And so while you were searching the woods, I took Callie down the hill.
Yep, that's when we started down the old logging roads, going down that hill. And folks, we're talking steep hills here. We're not talking mole hills. I mean, we're like 350 to 400 feet, almost straight up and down.
Yeah, they slide. You get a pebble under your foot.
Yeah, and this buck is side hilling and stuff. Like I say, when he went up these hills, I was not happy because it's a bad sign. So anyway, we get this, and we're going down the trail, and you can see blood, and then Callie's leading us.
Well, that's Callie kept pulling me down that hill.
Yeah, pulling us down the hill, and I'm like, okay, trust Callie, because we don't have a lot to go on now.
And then I looked down and saw a drop of blood.
Yep, there's bits of drops of blood as we go down here. Well, there were more trail cameras along this.
Right at the bottom of the
yeah,
base
there was I think there was one, if I remember right, there was one
there was.
Shortly down, there was one midway, and there was one down at the bottom.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going down there, and we're picking up, and the deer went this way, and then there'd be periods where there wasn't even any scuffs in the leaves or anything. It's like, well, what the heck happened here? And the trail is kind of petering out. Callie's not
we went
enthusiastic because we get down to the bottom.
We went to the bottom of the hill, and she took us down to the bottom of the hill, straight towards a county highway.
Yeah.
And when we got on the county highway, she hooked a left. And at first, she started to go across, but then she circled back. And then she wanted to follow along the road.
Yeah.
Of course, I was doubting, and I'm like, do we need to go all the way down there? So I brought her back through the bushes.
Well, we both thought, now the bottom of the hill took us into some heavy brush in a swampy area.
Yeah.
Where it just screamed deer
That's where deer sanctuary, that's where they're going to go die.
They go to die here.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, you can't just go charging through that because you burn up a lot of time just looking. So we're trying to find something. And it was this point, I think you came up with the idea.
Well, I got into
check with your neighbor and see if we can pull the cards. I'd like to see if, how this deer's hit. That made a lot of sense.
Well, I'd gotten into the burdocks at that point also.
I think that came after, but I guess.
Because you said, oh, no, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
We went and checked.
So that's when we checked, because then I went ahead and I called the neighbor, or texted him. I don't remember which it was. No matter. And he said yes, but please don't erase the cards because I'd like to see what.
Yeah, don't delete the pictures.
Yeah. And I go, well, yeah, we wouldn't delete the pictures, but we do want to see this buck if he's hit or not. Well, that made sense to all of us being hunters. So
yeah.
We anyway we went back. And we spent a couple hours. We didn't have a phone or anything remote. We had to pull the cards and come back here in order to read the cards.
Which we weren't too far from the house, so it wasn't.
And we needed lunch anyway because we didn't get a lot of sleep. We'd been trailing since sunup, and this is like noonish.
Yep, that's about noon.
Something like that. And much to our shock and amazement, there was no deer on any of the trail cameras.
There was like 5 or 6 cameras.
Well, there were deer, but there was no this deer on the trail cameras.
Yeah.
And I think there was one smaller buck. You hit that, and I go, no, he's a little bigger.
Yeah, he was a very.
The other thing Shane gave me.
But there was, like I said, there was pictures of other deer. Before we came down the hill, like way before.
Yeah.
And then there was pictures of me and Callie coming down the hill, but never a picture of this buck here. And that's when it started to click.
Yeah. Well, and then you started looking around because you were down at the bottom of that swamp, and that's the last. We found blood down there, so we knew the deer had been down at the bottom.
Yep.
Which, whenever you find the blood, that eliminates this big long trek back and forth up and down. And then again, it petered out because we were just getting tiny droplets at that time. It's really frustrating. Then I'm starting to think, I shot further back. I got gut shot or something like that. We didn't find anything black. Except in the initial part where he was.
That was the last spot of blood though we found was right there before the highway.
Yeah. Then there was no blood.
Nothing. Yeah. It was in that grass right before the little strip of woods before we got to the road. It was a little bit of blood. And I said it definitely went this way.
Yep. And then so you were taking Callie doing a search because Callie kept wanting to go out to the road and walk down the road.
Yep.
And both of us, we crossed it to see if the deer crossed the road. because that made sense.
No fresh tracks going up the
But it's
embankment on
like
the other side.
there's no wounded deer, and this is a heavily traveled county road.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of traffic on it. There's no way this deer walked down the road, Callie. Come on.
A car
And this is
would have went.
county
Yeah,
road.
a car would have went by and spooked this deer before it made it. Any length of distance.
Well,
out
around
there.
here, a car would have went by and somebody would have jumped out and shot it.
Or tackled it, wounded.
Tackled it or something. Yeah, a buck like this wouldn't have been.
So
welcome
this
to
is the
walk.
point that I got into the burdocks.
Yeah, you got into all the burdocks when I wasn't there as supervisor because
we came back
But
to
what
it.
I did is I walked back up to these trail cameras, and I went down behind those trail cameras, and there was blood. And what that deer apparently did is he knew those cameras were there. I don't know if he could hear the camera work.
Because yes, they do make a little noise. If you've ever been close to a trail camera when it's activated, I don't know if any of them out there that are dead silent. There is some type of mechanism in there.
But he had to know before it made noise. So at some point, when he walked this trail previously, this is my hypothesis with this whole thing. And because the camera made some kind of a noise, maybe flashed him at night or something, he geocached that location into his hippocampus and then decided, I don't like this. I'm walking around this spot. And he got off the trail, walked through this heavy brush, and then got back on the trail after he passed the trail.
And we're not saying...
He did that 3 times.
Yeah.
4 times counting the one up by the pond.
And that's proof that he was wary of these cameras. We're not saying that he knew what they were, their purpose, but
I don't think he knew their purpose. It's just something he didn't
obviously
like.
he's a deer. He doesn't know what they are, but he knows that
Which
he
totally
doesn't like
changed my
them.
attitude of how I put trail cameras
He
on
doesn't
before I
like
hunt.
them. He doesn't like them, and so he was going around them.
Yeah.
He wasn't
And
walking
all
right
my
by
year,
them.
I've been hunting deers over half a century. Never have I witnessed anything like that.
But we
I was
had
impressed.
we
and
had
then
one-
it gets even more interesting when you get in all those burdock, which forced us to take another break.
yes, because we had one more camera that
You had them all over in your eyes, and we had to
yes,
do medical surgery.
I'll show you a picture, but
Yeah.
this eye here, I think it was my right eye, was basically shut. It was so irritated, and we had
Shane's a man. He let me pick burdock things out of his eye with a tweezer.
yeah, that's very nerve wracking. You got a pointy tweezer at your eyeball, but if you
By
don't
a
know
guy
what,
who's not a trained medical
so what is a
professional.
burdock, by the way? Because that term I'd never heard in South Carolina. We called them. We didn't really have those things. We have like cockleburs.
We all call them burdock around here. Oh, some people refer to them as cocklebur. They're a little smaller than the real cocklebur, like a farmer has out in the
it attaches
infield.
to your clothes, and there's a picture of me with hundreds
Yeah.
of them all over me.
Yeah, the problem is the things, it's a love-hate because they're great wintertime food, especially for turkeys.
Yeah.
Turkeys like to eat them. That's a little off the subject from our trailing here, but
But they release some filaments, I guess part of the seed or the pod there. It's
Yeah.
almost like fiberglass.
well, yeah, if you look at one of these things under a microscope, it's actually hooked. The little spiky thing.
Yeah.
And they're hair-like. They're not sharp thorns, so they don't like stick or poke your hand.
But they
hook in your clothes and then they break apart. That's part of their strategy.
and they get into they itch and they get in your eye and then they burn, and so it was very unpleasant.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, you had to take a shower and everything because they were down your shirt and yeah.
we
it was
came
awful.
back here because we had one more camera to check the cards, and,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, that's right. We found another camera.
one more camera.
We pulled that.
And we decided to come back here. I would take a shower and wash my eyes out and get it all off of me because I'd insulated houses back
Yeah.
in my younger days, and when you insulate houses and get all the fiberglass on you, it itches and irritates your whole body. That's the way I felt. I felt like I'd been insulating a crawl space and I had fiberglass all over me. We checked that camera while I cleaned up.
And still no picture of our target.
Our target buck, yeah. And so now it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
We're heading back out
We
there.
head back out because neither of us give up lightly.
But wait, I missed a detail. While my eyes were still irritated by the burdocks and everything, and you were back up looking where we had come down the hill, I'd let Callie take me down the road 600 yards, a third of a mile, whatever it was. It was a long ways, just to see what she was doing and see where she was trying to take me. She cut into the swamp on a deer trail right next to a broken tree.
Well, see, it was my preconceived notion. I thought, well, there's no way that deer walked that road.
Yeah.
You went down there.
And you went back to the Jeep.
I went into the swamp.
Yeah.
And started just looking around cold because there were deer trails that network through this swampy spot.
And that's when I turned around because I was
And I was
like,
looking for
well, I
hopefully-
said, you're never going to find me if I let Callie take me into the swamp. I'll mark this spot with that dead tree. We'll bring Callie back later.
Yeah.
And I went back to the car. That's when we left and cleaned up and you looked at the camera last time. And then you wanted to come back and wind scent the swamp.
The swamp.
So here we are now, 21 and a half hours in the track, and
Yeah.
we head back, and you want a wind scent one last time. Before we take her back to the trail, she tried to pull me down.
Yep. And we did that. Of course, we didn't find it. And then we were wind scenting down around the backside. Because, then I hooked back up with you with the Jeep parked out there. And then we circled the swamp because we walked the old abandoned road.
Yeah, we
that
went
was
up
around the backside of the swamp.
Exactly right.
Okay, and then because the wind was blowing that way, and
It was coming across
This
the
was our
marsh.
Hail Mary because we had nothing else to go on.
Yeah.
And as we were walking back out, I had no, I didn't. I didn't park the Jeep there. That don't matter. Delete that part. Anyway, as we were walking out the trail, I'm one dejected hunter because I can't imagine how this buck got away. I thought, and I'm booting myself thinking it didn't hit him. It didn't hit him. And then we were walking along this brush, and Shane cut into the brush. I don't know if Callie at this point.
That's about. If you look at an aerial photo,
almost back to the county road.
Yeah, if you look at the aerial photo of where Callie cut me into the swamp, and I stopped her and marked beside that dead tree, and we did a big loop around the swamp because the wind was coming across, and we were letting her wind set. She cut the trail of that deer. We ended up back there, but I was going to take her back there anyway because even though I wasn't very optimistic we'd find that deer at this point, I was like him. I basically ready to throw the towel in.
It's like
I wanted to let her
happen. This deer's never going to die.
I wanted to let her take me in. She'd gotten us this far. Let's see where she's going to take us. Well, she ended up cutting that trail of that deer. I cut into the swamp. You took a left and went that trail, or out in that little food plot or field or whatever it was.
Yeah, I stayed out. I'll have to admit, I was literally dog tired at that moment in time. Didn't think we were going to find the deer. Callie was going to take a little bit of a detour, I thought.
Yeah.
And then Shane yells at me, "Oh, I got something in my eye."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, "Oh man, not again!" And I'm looking around. There's no burdock in this area. Going, "Oh, I got a twig or something." God, this guy's clumsier than I am.
Yeah. So I followed Callie up into the brush. And I'd had the burdock in my eye earlier, and I was like, Tim, I need some help over here. I got burdock. So anyway, I went into the brush, and Callie's going on, and I've got the leash streaming out, and she stops and wheels around like she normally does if she loses the trail and she's trying to reacquire. She came back towards me, and she took a left, or her right, my left, into the brush and went that way. And when I turned my head and leaned forward, I saw a deer leg sticking out. And she went right over there to that deer. And I came up in there and I saw that. And I'm like, I cannot believe this. We just found this deer 22 hours later. And so the first thing I thought of was, let me get my phone out and I'm going to fake to you and say that I got something in my eye just to get him over there. So I didn't want to ruin the surprise yet. And I'm like, hey, Charlie, come over here. I got something in my eye again. I need a hand. And he's like, all right, just stay where you're at. And he comes around and he's like, where are you at? And I'm like, over here. And I'm trying to get my camera on. I'm so excited. I didn't even hit record. I finally hit record, and you come around the corner.
Oh, you got a deer. Is that him?
That's it.
Holy I mean, holy moly.
That's a house.
Yeah, girl.
Hey,
right down by those broken trees where she tried to cut in.
Yeah, tried to cut in. That deer must have run all the way down the road.
Hot diggity dogs. Hot diggity dog. Good girl. This was a perfectly hit animal.
Yes, we did it
with the arrow.
We did an autopsy there in the field, and I wish I'd have recorded it at the time, but
I didn't know he had such a stomach. Okay, now we should specify here too. At this point, this deer hadn't been dead very long.
No, because
which was even more stunning. I was expecting a cold, stiff deer. This deer was still pretty limber. There was a little bit of rigor starting to set in, and it was a warm gutting job. No bad smell. Meat was perfectly good. So that deer had died just maybe
3-4 hours earlier.
A couple hours before we found it.
Yeah. So the meat was still good, which was nice.
The meat was still good.
What's shocking is how far this deer went, and with the injuries it had, because it was indeed a double lung.
Yeah, and I wrote on my blog because I put a lot of thought into what could possibly have gone wrong with this deer. In the shot, I have shot a lot of deer. And
it hit liver too, though, right?
Yeah, I had 2 lungs in the liver. We went in right behind the shoulder, and then we went out. The arrow went out the 3rd rib from the rear, and the liver sits up just inside the ribs a little bit, so the liver was just ticked on that one,
but one
would have
lung,
been on the right side of the deer.
one of the lungs had a huge growth or cyst on it.
Yeah,
And
that was the one that got punched.
Yeah, they got.
So we hypothesized at that moment that, well, maybe he wasn't breathing that much and he was breathing through the other lung because the other lung was hit a little further back.
Yeah,
it was
maybe
a quartering deer. But hey, all literature says you're supposed to take quartering deer shots. They're the best because you hit so much vital.
Yeah.
And it just about got the heart. I mean, I was right behind the heart going in up there, and that's.
Callie basically had us on the trail the whole time. Even though a dog doesn't necessarily stay on the exact deer trail, if the scent is coming from where the deer walked, is blowing across, and she can still smell it, she's on the trail. And she had us on there the whole time. We just kept stopping her. And
because we knew better.
And that was the track of the season that I finally knew I got to put a lot more trust in this dog.
Yeah,
and there are times when I have to restart her a couple times because I'm definitely sure she's on the wrong track or wrong course, that I put her back on and then she gets us on the right one. But what an epic hunt, or track, I should say, not a hunt, a hunt for deer.
Well, that's turning into a hunt. Remember, I was in stand less than 10 minutes. That wasn't much of a hunt part. That was a shoot.
Yeah.
And I'm glad my shooting was fine. That made me feel better, a little bit better there. But the trail, that was trailing a deer is hunting.
Yeah.
And in many cases,
there was a lot more work in this track.
Yeah, even with the aid of Callie, it was a lot more work
than any deer hunt that I've probably been on, because up these hills, it was getting pretty warm up in the day. I'd strip down to just a long sleeve shirt, but there you go. That was a great track. So hopefully the rest of the season, though, everything goes well. We're going to have cameras out there running nonstop, so it won't be just these little blips and blurbs of a track. Last year I just kind of half-heartedly.
Well, you were just beginning.
Yeah, and I was, as soon as a limb would grab the camera on my head, I'm like, get this camera off my head. This is not working. If you haven't subscribed yet, go into the bottom of this video, hit that subscribe button, and hit that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button so that you get notified each time I put a video up if you want to keep track of the new videos. So thanks a lot, Charlie, and
well, thank you.
We'll see you folks next time.
I said I would never have found this buck without you, and Callie.
Yeah, Callie.
Callie gives the credit.